Good morning and welcome to the new edition of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. We live in a strange world, and that world becomes all the more weird when we find that our leaders indulge in such activities which at the most can be called erratic, weird, eccentric, ham headed. I don't know. There are many adjectives. If you look up at thesaurus, there are at least 18 words which will identify such activities. And I'm referring to the foreign policy of the government of Canada. This absolutely impractical and at times bordering on absolute inane ideas characterizes the foreign policy of Canada. There are two Asian giants, and the weird, eerie policy shows that there is an uncanny, unacceptable contradiction in Canadian foreign policy towards these two Asian giants. The first one is China and the second is India. And we have seen in my last comments, I had mentioned how the Canadian leadership is interfering in the internal affairs of India. And they had made comments which were undiplomatic, to say the least. And if India had been as blunt and brutal as Saudi Arabia was, they would have thrown out the Canadian High Commissioner out of New Delhi. But they were content only with calling him and telling him that what Mr. Prime Minister is doing is unacceptable. Yesterday, 12 former diplomats who have served in Canada wrote a letter to Trudeau. That's not acceptable. That doesn't have any meaning, but that only shows how much resentment is there in this country, which is also a major trading partner. Not the most important, but quite a major one. The other is China. Now, here starts the contradiction. Canada criticizes India for violating the human rights. But when China imprisons and sends an incarnation more than a million Muslims, Uyghur Muslims, there's not a single word. Not a single word of protest. Not a single word of concern for those people. Why? Why is it that this government is so afraid of China? And now comes the news, which is shocking. And the whole military establishment in Canada, as well as diplomats, are concerned on this. Canada has undertaken to impart training to PLA soldiers, People's Liberation Army, the largest army in the world. And the military and diplomats, as I said, are at odds over this PLA training program. And no one should be surprised. The main component that's being discussed as a matter of concern is that the training would be given by the Canadian soldiers to the Chinese soldiers. Okay, that's acceptable. You give training to your friends, but the training would be on Canadian soil. Now, this is something incomprehensible. Normally, the training is given in the host, not in the host country, but where the trained people work. So the Canadian experts should have gone to China and trained the people there. When you invite them in your home ground, you are showing them those installations which you might want to camouflage during war. But here you are laying open, absolutely bare open, your own secrets, your own weaknesses, and possibly your strengths. And then don't forget, forewarned is forearmed. It has been obvious for some time there's something weird about the way Canada approaches its relationship with China. And there is a disconnect which manifests itself in sharp relief with the news. And that shows another thing, that the Canadian Foreign Office and the Department of National Defense, as the military, they are not in agreement. They are opposing to it, and they are not on the same page when it comes to the military ties and training involving Chinese Liberation Army, People's Liberation Army. If it had been, say, USA, it had been England, it would have been Germany, then the objections of the army would not have been there because they are fraternal armies. But China is not a fraternal army. And naturally, when the stories appeared in the media, there is a volcanic political outburst showing concern. And quite predictable it was, and that's why diplomats were alarmed when General Jonathan Vance, country's senior military commander, had cancelled winter military exercises with PLA last year. This was to be done last year and it was cancelled. But the diplomats were saying, no, this will annoy China. China would be angry. And they'll make the lives of two people who are imprisoned here even worse. Accept it. But are the lives, are the troubles of the two people more important than the security of the whole country? The safety of the millions? As a matter of fact, it's a theater of the absurd. The political theater, which is absurd for its weirdness. And the, and the policy, the foreign policy, shows its incoherence. The foreign policy of any country should be so clear that you know who are your friends and your enemies. Of course, there are no permanent friends and there are no permanent enemies. But some friends would always be friends, like Britain, like USA. However, the large differences we might have with these countries, the essential unity would remain. But what's missing is recognizing that Canada's policy towards China has been incoherent. And this is not now, it has been there since long. Only now it is becoming much more pronounced and much more prominent. Even at the time of conservatives, this was there. But the worst was actually started in the times of Brian Mulroney. But now, as I said, more important because China is increasingly belligerent and assertive. So, Canada needs to present a united political front, which it is not showing, and is also showing the fissures between the military as well as the diplomats. The Defense Minister Ajit Sajjan, he tried to provide damage control measures, saying that they will not be receiving winter warfare at Garrison, Petwa, Ontario. That's not enough. And then, he tried to blame Prime Minister Harper that in August 23, Prime Minister Harper had agreed to give a training program. But it did not mention that the training program was not meant to be imparted on the Canadian soil. And then the defense minister possibly forgot that the Chinese government in 2013 is not the same as the Chinese government today. They are completely different. In 2013, hardly a few months had passed since President Xi took office, and the Department of National Defense was trying to broaden the bilateral relationship with China. Now, it's not like that. It is now much more different. China is assertive, is the second largest economy in the world. It is poaching in South China Sea. It's poaching in Ladakh and Doklam in India. It's poaching in Vietnam. So it's showing its fangs everywhere. And it's also trying to use Arctic as a passage, which is again has dangerous implications, as I discussed this last time. So this curious incoherence was manifest when the chief of the defense staff, General Lawson, he said, no, it will not be done. And then, China had established at that time air defense on the South China Sea, which may not be relevant today, but what has happened is it has built an artificial island to control South China Sea, thereby threatening Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, and other littoral countries. USA was quite worried about that, and they had sent a note to the foreign minister. John Baird was the foreign minister about this. So China is clearly reshaping the strategic landscape, and we are providing training to those people. On the one side, we say that we are the peacemakers, and then we are helping an aggressor. Even the present finance minister and the deputy prime minister, she was the foreign minister at that time, and she made a statement which is very pertinent. I have a long personal experience reporting on authoritarian communist regimes, and I'm aware of the threat that they pose. So if the deputy prime minister is aware of the threat they pose, why in Hammers did the prime minister agree to provide training to the Chinese troops on Canadian mainland? Basically, it's a policy of wishful thinking. And the national defense is no stranger to the suspicions about China. It has spent enormous amount of time defending itself from cyber attacks. We have had cyber attacks. Our security was imperiled. And these cyber attacks were clearly, reportedly launched in Beijing. And then the Chinese government doesn't do it openly, it hires the businesses to do it. So the Trump administration has been tightening the screws on China. I don't know what Biden is going to do, though Biden is very close to China. But let's not forget that we have a Five Eyes intelligence agreement. Five Eyes intelligence partners discuss with each other the threats. And these Five Eyes include Canada, England, Israel, USA, and European Union. And the Five Eyes very clearly said it's not desirable. And based on that assessment, that intelligence assessment, General Vance had cancelled the winter warfare exercises last year. Then why was given the permission this year? Actually, nobody woke up to the major issues. We have been hunting with the hounds and running with the hare. It hasn't penetrated fully at the senior level of the political and economic elite that China's danger is a huge danger. That by inviting them, we are in fact subverting our own defense, our own security. And let's not forget, we still believe, possibly, which is, as I said, not practical, that China can be trusted. Looking at the record of China in relation to India, in relation to Vietnam, in relation to Philippines, Japan, and even Canada. Say, Huawei's vice president was arrested for being deported to USA, and China arrested two Canadian citizens, innocent people, just as a reprisal, which you never do. I mean, the whole thing smacks of absolute dumb-witted attitude. And this difference in approach towards India and China shows a dichotomy of thought. It shows that we are influenced by the petty personal likes and dislikes and not by the national need, not by what is required, and not by the realistic geopolitical situation. We are absolutely ingenuous about the dangers. And possibly we are aware of the dangers, but we just want to show our magnanimity at the cost of our own safety and our security being violated. But I'm concerned with this foreign policy that A doesn't differentiate between dictatorship and democracy. We as a democratic Commonwealth country should have more affiliation with India, which is democratic and Commonwealth country, than with China, which is a totalitarian state. But then we know our Prime Minister has a special love for the dictators, whether they are Fidel Castro, Iran, or China. So maybe the personal likes of the Prime Minister are penetrating the defense strategy and thereby hang the tail. I rue the day when the policymakers have to mend that policy, the national policy, to be in line with the policy of the Prime Minister. No, it should be in line with the national need. When shall Canada wake up to realize that our contradictory, ham handed approach is going to be injurious to Canadian interests? Think about it. Thank you.